All right, guys, welcome back to the Death by Tyranny podcast. We are back here on Facebook for all the people who do manage to catch a show live here and now and again. I appreciate all the support over at Facebook. I know not a lot of people are still left over there, but like I've said many, many times before, most of the people that do follow me over there because these are the people I come in contact with every day. And as far as my influence goes, I'm not an influencer. I'm not a popular podcast or YouTube channel. So the most that I can hope for at this time is to get as much information out as possible to the people that I actually come in contact with. And it's for multiple reasons, right? It's because these are the people that I genuinely care about the most. I think we all would like to think that a good human cares about people on an equal level, but that's just not true. We obviously love our families, our children's, our wives more. If we had to pull people out of a burning building, there's going to be some type of order that we would have to pull those people out of that building. And so the people that I come in contact with, maybe when I get a little bit bigger, it might get to the point where I genuinely have to, when I say things, keep in mind that my voice has a little deeper reach. But for now, I'm more concerned about the people that I come in contact with every day. For one, those people are actually going to be affecting the elections that are within my local reach. And I think that's important. Not to say that I still believe in election integrity, because I absolutely do not. But if it ever gets to a point where we genuinely are labeled as extreme terrorist on an individual level, and I'm sure we are when it comes to just a broad sweeping statement, but when we actually scan our IDs at the checkpoints and it pops up that we are right-wing extremist, at that point we can still say we were trying to stay within the system. We were trying to do the right thing. So yesterday's late night podcast, I was kind of talking about the idea that the federal government has already begun, and probably for some time has been developing and implementing tactics dealing with some type of large scale civil unrest. And they've marketed it to us in the form of terrorism in other countries. But they're using those data points and those military tactics. They're going to use those on us when it gets to that point. And the further we get along here and into history and the cycle that will repeat itself, we're going to get to the point where we come closer and closer to some type of civil conflict. And I think the biggest hurdle we as conservatives, as patriots of this country, are going to run into is that we don't know what that looks like, and we have to mentally prepare ourselves for the devastation that is going to bring. Now, when people say that there isn't going to be a civil war, or that there is a civil war that is ongoing, it's just not hot at the moment, the biggest defining factors are we don't really know what that looks like just yet. In the 20th century, we know what it looks like when it was the North and the South, but we no longer have those dividing lines in the United States. It's a lot more messier than that. We have those North and South lines dividing cities and counties and states. So it's going to be very, very hard to distinguish enemy versus friendly. And maybe when it gets to that point, it might be a little bit simpler, but I doubt it. And so for the most part, because we know it's not going to be easy to distinguish the difference between who is our potential enemy and who is potentially friendly, we have to try to prolong it as long as possible. Not that we shouldn't be doing that anyways, but because there are people out there that we care about now that we might have to, at the end of the day, take up arms against. And that's a scary idea. And I think that's where conservatives honestly have the biggest issue and why they bring up this idea that you can't just kill other Americans. Well, it happens every day, for one, on both sides, whether you like to believe that or not. You have criminals in the inner city raping, stealing, murdering. You have insane narcissists shooting up schools on almost, it seems, a weekly basis. So there are already Americans that are willing to cross that line. And then on the other side, you have those who conceal carry, who wish to be the barrier to stop those criminals from impacting innocent life. But at the end of the day, they are still killing other Americans. And then if you want to get really deep in the woods, you have our politicians who are implementing legislation that is making it nearly impossible to go on with our everyday lives, making it so difficult that people are taking their own lives. And I think in some ways we can even consider that other Americans impacting other Americans' lives to the point of casualties. So and there's a lot of things that us as conservatives have to just get over. For a long time now, we have let the left take advantage. We have let them play ball however they see fit while they gatekeep and hold us accountable. We don't break the rules. And in the back of our minds, we would like to think that's because we're holding ourselves to a higher standard and that makes us the better person. But realistically, how long can we let that go on while we're dying and they seem to be getting better and better? And I've also been talking about how it seems as if more people on both sides are getting over this idea of taking other American life at the end of the day. It is getting to the point where the political conversation is over. It is time for political and militant action for us to be able to survive as a country. And that's why I have this pulled up today. It's I don't really know his real name, to be completely honest with you. It's something generic like Mike. His channel is Black Scout Survival. He does have a lot of good video tips on survival and field crafting, as well as he dives deep in the woods into politics from time to time. So just to check the audio to make sure that I can screen share not only the image, but the audio, I'm going to play it, as well as there's some children outside of my house that are being like obnoxious. So here for about 2 minutes, I'm going to play this clip because he is talking about how many people honestly believe that we are headed into a civil war. And this is why I think it's so important for us to try to get over that hump. This idea that there's not a point at which we would fight amongst each other and take another American life if it, that was the absolute worst and last option. We're just slowly cruising the ship towards that, though. And unless we want to be in as bad of a situation as we are now, we have to get down in the mud with the liberals, so to speak, because they've beat us at every aspect of the game, politically, socially, culturally, financially, technologically. We are getting our ass kicked. But the one place that we might still have an edge is in the ability to own and train with small arms, our hardness, if you will, our ability to go out in the woods and survive, field craft, other things of that nature, as well as prepping. I'm not saying there aren't any liberals that do any of these things. I'm just saying we hold the majority of civilians in those camps. So if we get to a conflict civilly where it's very hard to distinguish between who's on what side, we might still have an edge in our ability to move, shoot, communicate. And that's important. It's probably one of the top things when you're talking about going to war and minimizing casualty. So this all is for nothing if we are the side that refuses to take it to that level. The liberals and the DNC in particular have been pushing for this for a long time. They have been pushing to disarm us. They have been pushing and succeeding in limiting our power in all aspects of life. They've been incriminating us. They have been going after our political candidates. So once we get to the point where we are literally at war, unless we get over that, all of the things that we are still holding the edge at will literally fall to the wayside, and we will get trampled and destroyed and defeated just as quickly as we have been in other aspects of our lives here in America. So like I said, he's going to be explaining some articles on the percentage of Americans that believe we are going into a civil conflict. And this is for two purposes again. One, to see if the screen share audio is working, and two is so I can kind of get some things together. And then before we go real knee deep into the weeds here today, I'm going to share this around a little bit just in case nobody's watching and nobody is able to share the video for me. I would like to get it around. It does seem that when I do put the link up at Gab, even though I'm not very active over there, my YouTube videos get a little bit more interaction. All right, so let's take a look at this audio and I'll be back with you guys in about 60 seconds.
And diagnose this based on the evidence. And so it's not something they made up, right? Let me see where else I have here. Americans say that, where is it at? Right here. 43% of Americans say civil war is at least somewhat likely in the next 10 years. The thing is, we saw with the riots, the increasing crime we've been seeing with no punishment. I mean, it's going rampant right now. I mean, the past few weeks have been showing video clips constantly, and that's just a snippet of what I'm seeing on the internet. I mean, it is everywhere and it's constant, right? So you see this increasing crime and these sort of things. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to keep exploding, right? Here's an article here. U.S. closer to civil war than most would likely to believe. So, going back to Bill Gates here for a moment, he says that political polarization goes hand in hand with another issue, and that is the spread of misinformation. Now, I would venture to say his whole statements at this Forbes conference was to throw shade at Republicans. I would say that's what his tactic was. He's not saying that the political polarization is a result of Democrats. He's saying it's Republicans. I'm certain, because he brings up misinformation, and the leftists love to say that. And misinformation to them is something that CNN didn't tell them. It can be true, but if CNN didn't say it, it is misinformation, right? And so he then goes on to say the polarization and lack of trust is a problem. Lack of trust. Why do we have lack of trust? Well, you lie to us, right? You say go get the jabby, you won't get it. You won't get the sickness, and then you do get it. Oh well, yeah, you're gonna get it, right? But you're not gonna spread it. Then oh no, you can spread it, right? Of course, I'm not gonna trust you. You can't keep the story straight, right? But he continued to Forbes, and then talking about Robert Kennedy, that had one of the best-selling books last year, saying that Bill Gates likes to make money and kill millions of people with vaccines, and he said that it's wild that it sells well. Well, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, what can you say? He says, I'm generally optimistic about the future, but one thing that dampens my outlook a bit is the increasing polarization in America, especially when it comes to politics. Gates wrote at the time in a blog post about the book pick. So there's actually another time he's talking about this in a blog post. But the U.S. is closer to civil war than any of us would like to believe. A member of a key CIA advisory panel has just said, right? So this is actually another article where a CIA advisory panel says, where the analysis applied that they use with other countries. This analysis was from a lady, former CIA analyst.
All right. So the audio sounds like it's making it through there. Like I said, this is just, I wanted to play that clip so you're not taking my word for it. Because I'm not as big as other channels are, sometimes I come on here and I say things and I think people, they just think I'm crazy, maybe. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, which, I guess, yeah, a little bit. But here's the thing. I don't take what I say here lightly. I don't just say things to waste my breath, my time, my financials, my energy. So I do like to make sure that the things that I'm saying has some type of concrete evidence or factual basis behind it. And we also got the video shared around. If anybody else did that while I was looking into the audio and making sure the obnoxious children outside screaming weren't my own. So I appreciate that. But so here's the thing. That's why I've been trying to get this through to you guys, is that the idea that there's going to be a civil conflict is not only growing to the point where it's almost the majority of this country, but history points to it. Things that are happening right now are leading to it. The faith and hope in the system is decreasing, and we have to be just as mentally prepared as we are physically capable. There have been plenty of stories that you can go back to on podcasts where they have military enlisted and ex-military people talk about being in a leadership position, getting shot at, and some of the people you would think would be at the front lines. You're more courageous soldiers all of a sudden mentally shut down, and they can't move. And this isn't just putting their self in danger. This is putting their fellow military soldiers in danger as well. And that's kind of where we are at as conservatives and Republicans in this country, is that there are more and more people really grasping this concept that we have to do something that's not being done, that the structure and the limits that we are bound to as citizens in 2022, following the rules, it's not working. And the more and more that this idea grows, that we are going to have to do something, the more people that open their eyes to that fact, the more likely it's going to be that there's going to be someone that's willing to take that charge. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be one individual that says, hey, we're going to war with the federal government. I think it's going to be a lot more blended than that. For instance, when we were getting shut down for COVID, and you had some of your more bigger, prominent gyms in New York stand up and stay open. Some of these people that really stuck out in your head along the headlines during the peak of the COVID response that we dealt with. I think it's going to be like that. So the more that this concept that we are indeed in a civil conflict or nearing one, the more that that catches on, the more you're going to start seeing stories and headlines pop up where you have some of these more prominent figures in society start to lead that charge. And unfortunately, the people that I thought were going to be some of these guys are getting right up to the edge, and then they kind of pussyfoot out of it. Mike Glover is one of these people. It seems as if he's only using what he is doing to benefit himself, his company, his friends, which, I mean, that's a direction you can go with, you know. Like I said, it's not going to be black and white. It might get to the point where the only people that you can protect is you and yours. So maybe he's just going into it with that mindset. But for as much as those type of guys like to preach this patriotic, freedom fighting, liberty, social media culture bullshit, you would think that they would be willing to go a little bit above and beyond that. And I guess that's just not the case, which is unfortunate. But I think there are going to be those people out there. I mean, I'm not rich. I'm not even close. I would almost be willing to say that I am poor. At least on the higher end of poor. At the very least. And I'm not the most technically sufficient person. I don't have the infrastructure or financials that would make me capable to lead anything. But I'm on here. I'm saying the things that people say I'm not supposed to say. So I would imagine at some point there's going to be someone that has a little bit more impact and capability than I that's willing to come out and say some of these things. And there are people that I believe are close to that and just haven't taken the final leap because they've been cock blocked so hard. Alex Jones is one of these people where you see him constantly speaking out, yet he's constantly under attack. So it's kind of a balance game. Whereas people like Mike Glover, they say they've been attacked, but I've never really seen it. The evidence to show that just isn't there. And if anything, the people who are criticizing them are people from our own side for good reason and with good constructive criticism. And the guy can just not take it. He immediately turns on his own and claims that that is what's happening to him. So we really got to just understand the crucialness of this idea. And I think one of the movies that really, and I hate basing things and like using movies as examples, but there are directors out there that are very capable, and they're really good at making you feel what they want you to in that moment. And so normally when I'm using movies as an example, the feeling that the director is trying to give you are the majority of takeaway from a certain scene in a movie is what I'm really getting at. Not saying that that movie is like a good example of what's going to happen from start to finish, but maybe in a particular scene. And one of those movies is The Patriot, where you really see this kind of family dynamic going into some type of a civil war, and just how devastating it can be, what kind of emotional hardships that can bring to the table. These are the things that we have to start thinking about, because there are people that are so wrapped up in their own world. Libertarians are a very good example of this. A lot of the people that I know that are wrapped up in their own world to the point where they just can't see the bigger picture. If you ask them what type of political party they think they would belong to, it's usually libertarian, because they genuinely think they can just live and let live. And that's not where we are at. I would think with the 2 years of COVID, that would be pretty fucking obvious by now. But, some people just have to have things like that to hold on to, or they're not going to make it. But there are still people out there, like I said, probably more than likely libertarian, where they are more worried about what makes them feel good. Like they are still going out and cheating on their spouse because that makes them feel good. There are still people that go out and get wasted every weekend because it helps them forget just how bad the world is. Well, the world is so bad that we are at a point where you can't just keep hiding from it. You can't just keep making yourself feel good and hope that it goes away while you hide. It's going to be there. You can keep doing the shit that you know that is wrong in hopes that this will blow over, and it's not going to. And even if it blows over for some, it will not blow over for all of us. And we can clearly see in social media and the mainstream media who is being targeted to not have it blow over them. So if you are of the conservative mindset and you're doing some of these things to hope that this blows over, that's not a very good strategy. 2008 was an economical nightmare. A lot of people lost a lot. There were people that took their own lives because it got that bad. Well, just last Friday, the stock market was at 2008 levels. We are getting there. And we didn't have anything like COVID or an economical shutdown and manipulation like we did with COVID in 2008. So, more than likely, the supply chain issues, the economical issues are going to be far worse. And not only that, but in 2008, we didn't have a particular citizen that was being targeted. We weren't saying, hey, we're going to take from Republicans to make sure that the Democrats survive this storm in 2008. But in 2022, they are doing that. They are saying we're going to take from conservatives. We are going to punish and silence conservative ideas. If it has any beneficial aftermath for the liberals of this country, then we're willing to do it. No matter the cost, we're going to do it to save our own. And you kind of had that on a level maybe as far as like your Wall Street insiders, your billionaires, your 1%, maybe they were kind of out for themselves. I'm sure there were some politicians that were out for themselves in 2008. But the general population wasn't like that. And we're like that now. So us as conservatives are being targeted. We're deciding to be the bigger person and get our ass kicked. And on top of that, we're being forced to deal with all of the devastation that the COVID response brought to our doorstep. And that is a cocktail that is going to have an end result of a lot of casualties for a lot of people on our side. And I wish I didn't have to say that. And liberals are not liberals, but the libertarian minded people think that this is still the wrong way to think about things, but understand that just because you think it's wrong doesn't mean it's happening or not happening, if you will. And the liberals absolutely think like that. So at some point, we have to do it as well. We have to start protecting ourselves. If you're not going to walk up to the bully and punch him in his fucking face, then at the very least, we have to start putting our hands up. And that's just the unfortunate truth that we are being forced to deal with every day. And it seems to be getting worse. If there was any like genuine sign of backpedaling our way out of this, I would think I would have seen it. And I can find some good left in this country, but it's nothing that is sustainable if we don't start doing things different. That's why I brought up this advantage that we would potentially have if it was like a force on force, actual combative civil conflict. As long as we were able to get over ourselves and say that, we're going to be the bigger person, we're going to only take this to the voting booths. If we were able to actually see the bullets whiz past our fucking faces and say, oh shit, they're actually trying to kill us. Maybe we should shoot back. That there is some potential there. But we would have to return fire. We would have to defend ourselves. And it just doesn't seem like the people that are leading and representing us politically are willing to do that. And as far as strategy goes, I think we're finally getting to a point where a new party was always never the best option. We've seen this with Ross Perot. That's the reason Bill Clinton won in the 90s. We seen Joe Jordanson, or whatever the fuck her stupid, dumb libertarian cunt name was, take enough votes away in certain places from Trump where it was a lot more easier for the DNC to hide the manipulations that was being done with the votes. So it's not always ideal to start a new party, but I think it is good to go to our respected Republican politicians and say, hey, look, you're going to get on board or you're going to get the fuck out. And that concept can work. Trump did it when he told the RNC, look, I'm going to run. You either let me be the Republican nominee or I will run independent. Him running independent probably wouldn't have gotten him the win, but him making that statement made enough of a scare, enough of a splash for the Republicans to do what needed to be done in that moment, for things to change for the better. So I think that might be an option politically. I just don't know that the ones that are there now are going to be willing to do the things that need to be done. They're not even willing to do the things that Trump wanted to do. So if they're not even willing to do simple, good, obvious ideas like Trump wanted to bring to the table, and mind you, when he said build the wall, that wasn't exactly a clear, defining, good idea. Now, I think the more we get into it, it is undeniable that it was a good idea, especially now that even Biden is secretly still building the wall after the DNC has added trillions to our national debt to try to stop Trump from doing that very thing. We need people that are willing to do those things, come out and say those things. And DeSantis is another good thing to look at here. And I'm not like saying I'm number one DeSantis fanboy over here. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at that he's just doing very simple things that are obviously the right thing to do in a lot of cases. And even him in his own party catches a lot of flack. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what we got. Now, on a smaller scale, we have some people that are doing some things and stirring the pot, saying the things that need to be said. Jim Jones from Ohio is one of those. But yeah. What else is happening today? That's enough of that. I get burnout on the Civil War stuff really quick because the people that talk about it on podcasts, social media, yada, 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 they do it in such a like try and clickbaity type shit. They don't just get to the point. If Tim Pool would get on a podcast and go, look, we're headed towards a civil war. You need to grasp the concept that you might have to potentially shoot other Americans in the face. Those Americans are already willing to shoot you in the face. That's where we're headed. Hold on to your dick and balls and enjoy the ride. If Tim Pool was more like that, I think it would be a little bit more consumable. But he is just so like little girly panicky about it that it's unbearable. That, and he always tries to bounce back and forth because he's a libertarian. And in this screen share that I have pulled up, this guy from Black Scout Survival talks about it. He goes, hey, somebody had mentioned that I don't like libertarians. That's not really what I meant. What I meant was the content creators, the social media influencers that come out and say they're libertarians, not because they are, but because they don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. They don't want to live or lose liberal viewership. They are trying to retain as many eyeballs as possible. So they're trying to claim libertarian just to say that they are somewhat in the middle. So, and even if you've watched Tim Pool for a while, not only does he mimic this almost to a T, but a lot of the same type of Tim Pool characters out there that claim to be libertarian, the topics and arguments they argue the best are conservative views. You know, it's not like they're coming out and saying, "Hey, I'm a libertarian. Now let me tell you why this libertarian candidate is the one who's going to lead us and save this country." They never say that. They always say, "Hey, I'm a libertarian. I don't like everything that Trump does, but he was the best thing we had going." Well, guess what, buddy? He didn't run as a libertarian. A lot of things that he did weren't of libertarian ideals. In fact, they were more alongside a Christian nationalist idea. And that term Christian nationalist is very there's a lot of people that find it very cringy on the right. A lot of the vet bro types, a lot of the bigger influencers in gun YouTube and on Instagram, they really like to go after the Christian nationalist, but they'll also ride the dick of Trump. And it's like, bro, you realize that the better ideas that Trump came to the table were Christian nationalist ideas. Just the concept alone, America first, was a nationalist view. But they like to try and tie the word nationalist as close as they possibly can with the Nazi Party in Germany during World War II, which is very, very foolish. Now, I'm sure somewhere in the long list of things, there might be a little bit of overlap, but I guarantee you there's more overlap with the Nazi Party and the Democrat Party in 2022 than there is with Christian nationalism and the Nazi Party. So, my babysitter's not here yet, so I'm not necessarily in a rush to get off here. All right. Looks like a couple people liked the post of me going live. You know, I've been known to say that people don't like to support me, and I don't have a whole lot of support. And while that is a factual statement, I sometimes think that people want to support me. They're just some of these people that I'm talking about that aren't ready to grasp some of the ideas that we really need to start taking a hard look at. And some of the podcasters, YouTube channels that are making a lot bigger of a splash or impact or building a bigger following than me, they have a lot of the same concept and ideas, but what they're portraying to their audience is different portions of that are a little bit easier to swallow. Like I think I've talked about him before, the Risky Krisky guy on YouTube. He's one of the few people that are trying to drive the gun culture away from the CQB concept, as if we had a civil war, you think you would actually just be going like kicking door to door down. If that was the case, that's not going to be us. The conservative civilian in a civil conflict in this country will not be the people that are going door to door, kicking them down and doing CQB. We will be the ones that are up in the mountains. And not because that is the best strategy, but that's going to be because we will be forced to. Because we're at a point in this country where we are no longer a republic. There is no Republicans are going to take back control. We might win some seats. We might even take the White House again. But I don't think we get to a point where conservatives truly have as much influence and control as liberals do in this country before that civil conflict kicks off. So we're going to be the ones on the run. And Risky Krisky here, he's talking about some of these more so like field crafty militant things. He believes that the federal government is tyrannical and there's probably going to be some type of civil conflict, but he knows that if he wants a large audience, that a lot of those people aren't ready to hear that. So he's bringing it to them in a different palette, if you will. He's telling you need to get better with your communication. You might need to get a hold of and keep in communication with people across your state, hundreds of miles away. You might need to look into securing a larger portion of land near your home, because a lot of us are not in the position where we own hundreds of acres. But there possibly are a lot of us that are close to portions of land like that. And I know there are even more people than just Risky that are talking about this, where you're going to your national parks close to you. You're mapping out the terrain. Some of these guys are even going so far as to starting to take some of their preparations, their stockpiles, and scatter them across some of this property. And that's not a bad idea. But they're ending up here because they've already thought that concept that the federal government is tyrannical, and more than likely they will come to kill us. There's going to be some type of civil conflict, and we will be the ones forced to the land and out of the cities. There's even preppers that are more so on the spiritual side that have been talking for a while now, telling their people to come from out of the cities and into the country. I don't exactly know how the saying goes. I believe it's something like, "Come forth, my people." But that saying, what it's trying to drive home there is, we're not going to own the cities. That's not going to happen. So as cool as the Navy SEAL CQB shit is, it's a little bit unrealistic. And for the last probably 5 years in the gun community, we have been going to the short-barreled rifle platforms, where that might not do us the best when it comes to versatility in what we need. And not only that, but before we go hot, there's a good chance that Biden is going to force something through that is going to put those people that hold those 11.5-inch pistol builds on some type of registry, which is going to make it even easier to track the locations of these civilians' artillery. And that's not a good thing. But it's also just one more thing that it points to you to prove that they already have things in play to make it harder on us. And if a government was truly for the people, by the people, they would not be putting things in place to make it harder for those very people to fight against them at the point they were to be tyrannical. That means they are already at that point. They are already trying to silence us, censor us, disarm us, kill us, brainwash our children. I just don't know on what planet anybody considers that not under attack. Like, what more do they have to do before you consider us doing anything not defense? Anytime you see anyone bring this idea of a civil conflict, even if they're not promoting it, just saying it's inevitable, they tell them that that's unrealistic, that that can't be the way, that that has to be the last option, but never willing to admit that we're already there, that even if it is the last option, guess what? We've burned through the rest of them, so this is the last fucking one. So what exactly are we left to do? Continue to take casualties? That seems a bit stupid. But I mean, that is literally where our political leaders are at in this country. We're going to continue to take casualties as long as you keep donating, so we can continue to pretend to make a difference. We're going to tell you we're not at that point, and that has a lot to do with it. That has a lot to do with why Republicans and conservatives, at least from a political standpoint, refuse to say that it's time. We've made it to the point where the last option is the only option left, is they know once we get to that point, their following will no longer be able to financially support them. They will have to really start to crack down and financially start to dig into, prepping for their own families. Because no matter how bad it gets, we're not going to be willing to take our wives and children into battle. We're going to have to make sure that they are fine before us, the warriors of society, go and kick these off, the conflict off, even though, like I said, I think it's already kicked off. So for the politicians to admit we're at that point, they're going to lose almost every bit, if not all, of their financial support. And they have too much invest in just being in front of people's eyeballs. And the little financials they would have left, they would probably either turncoat or run to the hills and hide. They're willing to talk a mean game on social media, but bet your ass 99% of those politicians will not pick up arms and go to war. Most of them are team federal government, if not all of them. Um, the drinking bros, Dan Holloway saying all politicians are cunts. I think that has a lot to do with it. To know that there are politicians out there that are doing anything and everything they can, not only to steal your tax dollars away, but then also to grift and plead for your donations. And then to know that it is time to really crack down and save our own. That when that time is there is no choice but to accept that as reality, that they're gonna run. If not, just flip to the other team. So that would make them pretty cunty, in my opinion. And I don't know if I got a whole lot more talking in me left today. Not a lot of people on here. Not anybody on here, to be honest. If somebody wants to show up in the next 2 or 3 minutes and wants me to talk about something, maybe we'll dive into it. But other than that, to constantly talk to yourself for hours on end is kind of draining, and I do still have to go to work. Like I said, I'm actually only on here still because my babysitter hasn't showed up. So, for all of the people that are going to listen to this after the fact, I appreciate your support. I'm glad you guys are still showing up. Hopefully, you are starting to understand and realize that no matter what is to come, it's not going to be easy. And it does us no good to keep idolizing the people that have put us in this position. It does us no good to bury our head in the sand and continue to do things just to numb ourselves and to hide, especially if those things are hurting the people around you. Hopefully, at least you guys are to that point and have taken that away from the podcast. And if you're not already to the point of believing that some type of civil conflict is inevitable, we can get you there. I know it gets tiresome hearing me harp on the same things, but it's in hopes that every day it might reach somebody new and convince somebody that doesn't own their AR-15 that they should probably start saving for one. And for the people that do have them, to actually go out and start training with them. And for the people that already go out and train with them, to realize that this idea that we're going to be in the cities pulling CQB is foolish. We're going to be in the rural areas, marching through cornfields, probably hiding by night, probably hiding all the time, to be completely honest. Trying to do as much as possible until somebody stands up and says enough's enough. Things have to change. We can get to a point where we're looking at the bigger picture here. We're going to need more than just us. We're going to need teams. We're going to need leaders. We're going to need machine gunners. We're going to need communication experts. There's going to be radio waves being monitored. And on those radio waves that are being monitored, there's going to be people just like me on the other end of those microphones, speaking in codes, trying to disperse some type of hope, to keep the rebellion alive, to keep fighting. It sounds really tacky and corny to say, but it is very much going to be in the spirit of almost Star Wars like fiction, where the last of the good are hiding, being hunted by the evil in the world. And amongst those good that are left, secret coded messages will be spread. And just maybe we will make it to the other side. But with that, guys, I am going to go ahead and get off here. We're at the hour mark. I do like to try to listen back to these to make sure it isn't too ridiculous. Stay safe, stay prepared. I love you guys. God bless. America first. Peace, y'all.